Today we're looking at box plots. Now they're sometimes called box and whisker plots, but they both mean exactly the same thing. I'm going to call them box plots just because it's easier. Hopefully you've seen them before. If not, I'll show you a picture in a second. But the questions today, here's an example. They might ask you something like this. They'll give you a list of numbers and they'll tell you to show it in a box plot. Represent the following data in a box plot. So you've got some numbers, but they want you to make a box plot out of it. That's what the questions will be asking of you today. So we need to know what they look like, and we need to know what to do with this list of numbers so that we can make a box plot. So you don't have to copy that down. That's just a bit of an introduction. But I do want you to copy down this box plot here. This is what they look like. So I hope that does look familiar to you. You notice that there are 5 key parts of a box plot. And I've done them in color so you can see. The ends are both green, but they're the 5 parts of this box plot, green, blue, red, orange, green again. I want you to know that they are the most important parts because that's the information that we need to find out from our list of numbers so that we can draw a box plot. And if you know what I'm talking about, I'd like you to try and label each of those 5 points. I've just got little arrows pointing to them so that you're really clear what I want you to label. But if you remember anything about box plots, you might know what some of these coloured sections represent. Now, you don't have to draw them in separate colours when you're answering the questions. This is just an example to help us understand what it looks like a bit easier. So if you know what any of those stand for, pause the video now and write it down. If you've got absolutely no idea, then at least have this diagram ready so when the answers come up, you can add them to your notes. So this is what the labeling should look like. That line, it can even sometimes just be a dot or a circle, that point on the very far left there, that's just the min or the minimum number, the lowest number. So if min doesn't make sense to you, you can call that green one lowest number. That might be a bit more easy to understand. Q1 is the next one, the median in the middle. You can just call the other one Q3 if you like. Max is just another way of saying the highest number. So from that list of numbers you saw before, max just means highest number. So if you think that makes more sense to you, call that dot at the other end highest number. All right, let's move on to a question. Once you've got that copy down, pause it if you need to, then we'll move on to a question. So this is another word that I want you to write down, another phrase, sorry. 5-figure summary. Sometimes it's called a 5-number summary or a 5-figure summary. They mean the same thing. This is, I guess, a snapshot. These are the 5 things that you need to be able to draw a box plot. So notice those purple 5 bits of info, min, Q1, median, Q3, and max, they're the same 5 things that you just wrote about on the previous image. They are the 5 things that you need if you want to draw a box plot. So sometimes a question will say, here is a 5-figure summary, draw a box plot out of it. So they've done some of the work for you. They didn't even give you a list of numbers and make you work it out for yourself. They gave you all the info you need and said, turn it into a box plot. So the first thing that I want you to do, before you even draw the box plot, is you need to draw a scale or a line across the bottom of your page. So I want you to try and do this with me or before me if you can. You need to draw a line across the bottom of your page, like if you were drawing a graph. This would be your scale. Now you can start counting at whatever number you want, and you can finish counting at whatever number you want. But have a look at the numbers from your 5-figure summary. I'd start counting at somewhere around my min number, and I would make my line or my scale go somewhere around my highest number. You can count by anything you want. I'm going to count by 2s when I do mine. So if you think you know how to do it, pause the video and draw it now, and I'll have mine come up on after the pause. So mine looks like this. Again, yours might be a tiny bit different. You might want to start from the number 2 if you wanted some spare numbers down the bottom. But what's important is, because the min or the minimum number's 4, your scale has to start counting at 4. You can count by anything you want, but 2s is normally a good number if the numbers aren't too far apart. And my next one, Oh, I've cut a bit of it off, I'm sorry. So have a look at my graph, my scale there, and it goes up to 16. I probably should, well, I did have, go up to 18 on the other end, because at the moment my scale can't fit the 17 in. It'll be fixed by the next image. So now that you've got that scale there, you can draw your box plot above it. What I want you to do now is pause the video and draw the box plot, making it look exactly like the image or the example that you copied down from the start. So put a dot or a little line above the 4, because that's where the min goes, and then draw your box in the middle with the other info. When you're finished, unpause and see if it looks like mine. So that's what your completed box plot should look like. Notice you've got the smaller, or the dots or lines above the 4 and the 17. I fixed up my scale. And the box in the middle is above the corresponding numbers. So for the even numbers, it's easy because above the 4, I can go straight up. But for the Q1, because it's a 7, it has to land in between the 7 and the 8. So you just need to be as close to accurate as you can when you're drawing that line if it's above an odd number. Same thing with the 9 for the median. I've just drawn it halfway between the 8 and the 10. But that's a completed box plot. That's what yours should look like. Let's try one more example. I've got a list of numbers. I've been given a list of numbers and they've told me to draw a box plot. But I can't draw a box plot until I find the 5-figure summary. So even if part 1 wasn't there, even if question 1 wasn't there and all it said was draw a box plot, well, you can't draw it until you've found the 5-figure summary anyway. So you need to make sure that even if it just says draw a box plot, that part 1 is implied. You have to do that first anyway. So I'd like you to write down your 5 little headings or your subheadings, write down what info you need to find for your 5-figure summary, and we'll start working through it. Now, a couple of tips. You don't have to do them all in order. For example, Q1 and Q3, they're the trickiest to find. We'll leave them till last. If I said to you, just write down the 2 easiest ones first, I think you'd probably agree that that's min and max. So all I want you to do now is pause it and write down what min and max would be. Okay, I've taken min and max straight from the numbers up the top. The lowest number's 1 and the highest number's 15. That's all I had to do. Nice and easy ones to start with. Next, we need to find the median. Remember, we can't find Q1 and Q3 if we don't know what the median is anyway. So that's the one that we'll find next. I want you to do that thing when you put your hand on the lowest number and the highest number. I mean, find it however you want, but this system seems to work for us. Put your left index finger on the 1, put your right index finger on the 15, and move your fingers in one by one until they land on a number, or land in between a number, depending on how it works. Anyway, keep going till your fingers meet, and then write down what the median is. If you did it correctly, you will have found that your 2 hands met on this number 8. So I've circled it, and that's my median. Now we can find Q1 and Q3. When we pause it, I'll get you to find both of them. So look back at your notes if you need any help. But for Q1, it's halfway between the lowest number and the median. So you're going to do exactly the same thing that you just did with your hands, but because you've circled that number 8, you can't use it anymore. So that number 8 is out of action. That means your left index finger will go on the number 1, and your right index finger will go on that number 7. So to find Q1, you just do the same thing till your fingers meet, but you can't use that number 8 that's been circled anymore because it's out of action. Do the exact same thing on the other side to find Q3. Remember, you can't use the circled 8, so put a finger on the 8, finger on the 15, keep going. This time I will tell you that where your fingers meet, it'll be in between 2 numbers. So you need to work out what the middle is between those 2 numbers. Find Q1 and Q3 and then come back. Okay, Q1, if you did the thing with your hands, you realize that your fingers will have met in between 4 and 4. So you have to work out what the middle, what's between 4 and 4. Well, it's just 4. Remember though, the mathematical way to work that out is if you land between two numbers, you add up those two numbers and then you divide it by 2. You always divide by 2. So 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. That's how you know you've done it correctly. Down at the other end, your two fingers will have met in between the 13 and the 14. Again, nice and straightforward numbers. The middle of 13 and 14 must be 13 and a half, so we know that. But if they were really far away numbers, you'd add them up. So again, if you wanted to test it out this time, 13 plus 14, that's 27. And then you always divide it by 2. 27 divided by 2 is 13.5. That's how you know you've done it correctly. So now we've got our 5-figure summary, we are ready to draw our box plot. Pause the video and do two things. First, draw that scale underneath, the line underneath. I'm going to count by 2s again because the numbers are relatively close together. Decide what number you want to start at. Decide what number you want to count up to. And draw your box plot above it. Then, once you've finished your box plot, unpause and see if it looks the same as my one. So here it is. I started from 0. You might have started by 1 and counted 1, 3, 5, 7. That's fine as well. Your scale can be anything you like as long as it's always counting up by the same number and it starts low enough and counts up high enough. But that's what my box plot looks like. See if your lines are exactly above all the same numbers as mine. And if you've got it totally correct, it means you're ready to start the questions.